Today, I want to talk about rejection. But first, let's actually talk about marriage. Hypothetically, let me tell you that you were about to propose. And here's what you know about this person. You've met them once, maybe twice, or maybe not at all because of the pandemic. But you tell yourself you've done your research. You surfed their website, their social media, and at this point, you feel like you really know who they are. And so, you decide that you're ready to spend the rest of your life with them, or at least the next 4 years. And so, you're all excited, and you go to your parents, and you tell them this: I'm ready to get married. And they look at you, and they say, are you crazy? Because after all, who would try to get married with such limited information? But if you think about it, that's exactly what the college early decision process is like. If you've ever been into one of those stuffy college info sessions, then you'll know they always like to stop, and they highlight the early decision. They tell you this: apply ED if you feel like this is the school that you truly belong at, right? But what they don't often highlight is that oftentimes applying ED is your best chance into getting into any school. And so naturally, students feel compelled to apply early decision. They feel like if they don't, they'll miss out on this opportunity. And after deciding to commit, they feel compelled to find a reason, or they feel the need to call it their dream school. And all of a sudden, the school they would like to attend has turned into their one and only. And this leads me to my next point. It can be easy to fear that your ED is your only school, but I realized that wasn't the case. Too often, we start associating our self-worth with our achievements. It's easy to believe that getting into a good college will make you better. But the truth of the matter is that whether or not you get in, you're still the same person. If you really think about it, college admissions are assessing students on 3 things: their stats, their essays, and their teacher recs. They can't possibly get to know the entire you. What's even crazier is the fact that colleges are trying to admit what they believe is the perfect fit. In fact, if you told me what they were doing, I'd say it's just as crazy as an 18-year-old kid trying to get married. And these crazy expectations and disappointments lead me to where I am here now. My name is Mason Kung, and I'm a current high school senior. This year, I've taken on the daunting process of applying to college, and I've learned a lot. The college process is notorious for making students feel powerless. What I noticed after looking at my peers and myself was that the college process was consuming us. It dominated our thoughts, our interactions, and at the base of it all was this overwhelming fear of rejection. But it was only till after I got rejected that I realized I was looking at it all the wrong way. I couldn't change whether the college admissions officers wanted to admit me or not, but what I could change was how I choose to view it. I realized that if I reimagined the way I interacted with the process, then maybe it wouldn't be so bad. And so that's what I want to talk about today: how you can not only overcome rejection, but how you can also learn from the experience. Rejection at its core is a relatively simple concept. It's when we want something and we actively try to get it, but our goals aren't met. Take, for example, you're in class and you raise your hand. The teacher doesn't pick on you. You feel a little bit disappointed. That's an example of rejection. Too often, we think of rejection as this gate that's keeping us away from what we want. But really, it's a roadblock that we can either choose to give up on or try to maneuver around. But no matter what, whenever you get rejected, it always hurts a little bit. And there's a surprising reason for that. Psychologist Guy Winch found through fMRI scans that we handle rejection in a similar way to how we handle physical pain. In fact, he even found that using pain relievers such as Tylenol can reduce the pain of rejection. Now, that being said, I'm not encouraging you to go out and buy Tylenol whenever you have an important decision. Instead, this presentation is all about how you cannot use drugs to solve your problems. But beyond the physical, rejection impacts us on an emotional level. The Buddha said this: the root of suffering is attachment. And what he meant was pain is intrinsic to emotional connection. He believed that our cravings caused our suffering. When you want something, it's naturally going to hurt when you don't get it. And the more you want something, it's going to hurt even more. I thought to me that my early decision was my dream school. I had to get in. And so naturally, when I didn't get in, it kind of hurt a little bit. But in Buddhism, there's a solution to this. The Buddha believed that if you reduced your cravings or your desires, it wouldn't hurt so much when you get rejected. But I know myself. I'm always going to still want things. And so I realized this isn't a feasible method. So I want to propose something else. What if instead of trying to remove our desires, we instead looked at it differently? We tried to reorient and reimagine what we wanted. I thought then, if we looked at it from that perspective, maybe it wouldn't hurt so badly. And so, the college app process. When I was waiting for my decisions, my mind was going nuts. It was definitely doing some acrobatics it wasn't designed for. And I realized that I needed a method to learn how to deal with this. And so what I came up with were the 4 R's, or the 4 steps to deal with pre-decision anxiety. And they go like this: resist, recognize, reframe, and redirect. What do they mean? Well, first off, resist. As you're waiting for your college decision, or any big decision, oftentimes your mind is your biggest enemy. I know for me personally, when I was waiting, I had all these thoughts in my head, like, what if I get rejected? Or what if they don't like me? Or what if my essay wasn't good enough? Those thoughts aren't going to help you. My dad recommended me to do this, and I still do it today. Whenever I'm feeling really stressed and I need a sense of peace, I tell myself this: this is not working. And it's really simple, but saying it out loud oftentimes makes that much of a difference. Allowing it helps me reset and recontrol myself. And then the next step is recognize. I was scared of 2 things. I was scared that my early decision was my dream school and not getting in would be the end of me. I know. And 2, I was scared that not having control over my college app was going to ruin me. I felt like no matter what I did, it didn't matter. And so I realized that you need to recognize your problems. It's easy to chalk all of what you're feeling up to college dread, but I realized once I had broken it down, it helped me even more. As Master Yoda says, nameth must your fear be, before banish it you can. You have to understand what your issue is if you have any hopes of trying to fix it. And so that leads me to reframe. And I want to talk about the first part I identified, the whole part about me being scared about my college early decision. And I was thinking about it, and I realized, what did me going to my ED mean? Well, obviously I was going to college, which was what I really wanted, but what does college actually mean for me? Going to college for me meant getting a good education, meeting new people, and ultimately having fun. And what I realized when I looked at it from that perspective, I didn't need to go to one school. I realized that if I reflected and expand on what I was actually worried about, I realized that there was other options. There's never one sole path, and it's up to you to try to figure out the other ways. The second step. I oftentimes felt powerless when I was going through my college decision process. I felt like I was waiting and it was all out of my hands. And it's true, you can't change your decision, but you can choose how you choose to view it. Instead of rejecting myself, I decided to plan what happens if I actually got rejected. Because too often, we don't actually think about what's next. And so, I came up with this elaborate plan, and it went like this. Step 1, it's okay to be upset. Step 2, write all your college apps during break. I know, it was really smart. And so when I got rejected, that's exactly what I did. But after I made that plan, I realized that nothing I could do would actually change anything. It was out of my hands. And so I decided to dedicate my time to do other things. Instead, I realized that I had so many more options. I could read a book, I could play video games, I could do anything else besides think about the college process. And hey, I could even get started ahead of time on that project I had coming up. And so when you finally get that decision back and it says no, what do you do? And I have an initial response, but I don't know if you'll like it. When you get it back, in those moments, it's going to suck. And those moments are incredibly painful and raw, but that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. And if you're friends and family of anyone who gets rejected, it's important that you tell them that you understand what it's like. You don't have to try to solve their issues. All they want from you is to just understand. And that means the world of a difference. But I realized is that I was still upset and I needed a way to move on. And that came in the form of my father. He gave me a little push. He looked at me and he said, wow, that sucks you didn't get in. I guess you're writing apps. And he was right. I was upset that I wouldn't get in, but I had to move on. And so I spent my entire winter break, as described in that elaborate plan, writing down all my college apps. And what I learned is that those steps I laid out for dealing with pre-decision anxiety were just as important for dealing with post-decision sadness. Here's them again if you need a review. I realized that I needed to resist the urge to feel sad and keep beating myself up. Yes, I didn't get in, but it was okay. I didn't need to keep punishing myself for what's already happened. Then I needed to recognize what was going on. It was fine. I had all these other opportunities. And then I reframed it, right? I was so scared of not getting into one college, and it actually happened. So where did that lead me now? Well, if I didn't get into one college, I had this newfound opportunity to apply to so many more. All of a sudden, I had variety. And what I realized is that I was researching schools, and I realized that there was so much more value in the other schools than I thought. I realized that my early decision, which I felt like my whole life was building up towards, was just one school out of many. There's over 3,000 colleges in the United States. And then I redirected. Instead of spending my time worrying, I wrote my apps, and after that, I realized that that gave me the distance I needed to not always worry about it. Just recently, as I was working on my talk, I realized I needed one more step, and that came in the form of reflect. I needed to think about what it all meant. At this point, if you've gone through any big decision, a big change has happened, but you need to consider what it's all meant. And so I want you to ask yourself these questions. So what? Why does it matter? And what am I going to do now? And at the very end, you should think to yourself, what has changed? And something should change. For example, if you're applying for that big job promotion that you've been looking forward to and you don't get it, what has changed for you? You have options. Do you decide that it's time that you work harder to prove that you're worthy for that promotion? Or maybe it's a sign that you've reached your peak in the organization and that it's time to move on. Whatever you decide, it's important that you don't stay stagnant. What's happened to you is a big deal, and it's okay to be upset, but it's important that you learn from your decision. What I realized is that the 5 steps gave me more control over myself. They gave me more power, and they allowed me to distance myself from my rejection. Yes, it still hurt, but it didn't hurt as much, and I believe that I learned something from that experience. I truly believe that no matter what, you can always learn from your decisions if you take the time to stop and reflect. Doing the first 4 is about gaining the distance and gaining the perspective you need so that you can do the final step, reflect. But regardless, I was still scared when my RD apps came out. And so, this is what my friend said to me. He said, "It's not over. Let's just keep our head high, or at least try to." And I realized he was right. I was so worried, but it was out of my hands. I could only be proud of what I did. Whenever you apply for something, you're taking a massive risk. It's the fear of failure. But if you really think about it, maybe it's not as big as you once thought. I was so scared of getting rejected from my early decision. I thought it was the end of the world. But was it? I mean, I'm still here today. I really don't think it is. And so no matter what, I want you to keep your head held high and be proud of what you've done. What you're doing is incredibly brave no matter what you're applying for. And I want you to take confidence in the fact that you have the opportunity to bounce back and to learn from this experience. I like to joke that in 20 years, the decisions that once seemed so big are no longer as scary as I once thought. But what I realized is that in the here and now, my problems felt very real and very scary. And that's true with everything. No matter where you are in your life, whether it's 20 years out or you're still an 18-year-old kid, the current problem you face will always feel like the most important. Which means that in that time, it's important that you try to work and you expand your perspective so that you don't feel so pigeonholed. And so I want you to think carefully and use the 5 steps. And I want you to think carefully and use those 5 steps to give you the distance and perspective that you need when dealing with any issue. Right now, I'm still 18 and I'm not planning on getting married anytime soon. What I realized is that those rejections that oftentimes felt like a wall that was keeping me back, they're not a wall. Instead, they're stepping stones. I'm going to continue to climb them as I make my way throughout my life. Thank you.